The massive Krillian warship hung in the darkness of space, like a sleeping predator. Its hull gleamed with rows of weapons that could destroy entire moons. On the bridge, Commander Vextal studied the small human ship that had appeared on his scanners. "Sir, it is just one tiny vessel," his weapons officer reported. "Very weak shields. No real weapons that we can see." Vextal clicked his sharp teeth together. His kind looked like giant insects made of living metal. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that could stop most weapons. They were known across the galaxy as fierce warriors who never lost a fight. "What is a human ship doing in our secret space?" Vextal asked. His voice sounded like grinding metal. "This sector is forbidden. No one should be here. The ship seems lost, Commander. It is sending out signals asking for help." Vextal laughed, a harsh sound that made his crew shiver. Humans were new to space travel. Everyone knew they were soft creatures from a backwater planet, weak and easy to break. "Open a communication line," he ordered. "Let us see what this little bug wants before we crush it." The main screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, an older man with kind eyes and gray hair. He wore a simple black suit and looked like someone's grandfather. He smiled warmly at the camera. "Hello there," the human said in a cheerful voice. "I am Ambassador Kim Jae-sung from Earth. Thank you for answering my call. I seem to have taken a wrong turn somewhere near Jupiter." The bridge fell silent. The crew stared at the screen in shock. This soft creature was acting like he was asking for directions to a grocery store, not facing the most feared warship in this part of the galaxy. "Human," Vextal growled. Leaning forward, his red eyes glowed with anger. "You have entered forbidden space. You have seen our military base. You know too much." Jae-sung looked confused. "Oh, I am very sorry about that. I certainly did not mean to intrude. Perhaps we could discuss this? I have some excellent tea in my ship. Green tea from Korea. Very relaxing." The weapons officer turned to Vextal with wide eyes. "Commander, is he inviting us a tea?" "I believe he is," Vextal replied slowly. He had fought battles across 50 star systems. He had conquered entire planets. Never once had an enemy offered him tea. Jae-sung continued talking as if they were old friends. "You see, I am actually here on diplomatic business. There seems to be some confusion about mining rights in the Kepler system. Nothing that cannot be sorted out with a nice conversation." Vextal felt his rage building. How dare this weak little creature speak so casually? Did he not understand that he was about to die? Did he not see the massive weapons pointed at his fragile ship? "You stupid human!" Vextal roared, standing up from his command chair. "Do you not know who we are? We are the Krillian Empire. We crush worlds. We destroy entire fleets. And you offer us tea?" Jae-sung blinked in surprise. "Oh my, I did not realize you were having such a bad day. Tea really does help with stress. You know, my grandmother always said dash." "Enough!" Vextal screamed. "I will show you what happens to insects who buzz where they do not belong." He turned to his weapons officer. "Fire the secondary plasma cannon. Aim it directly at the human. I want to see him burn." "Sir, should we not capture him first? Question him about Earth's defenses." "No," Vextal snarled. "I want to watch him die slowly. Fire when ready." The crew hurried to obey. The secondary plasma cannon was a terrible weapon. It shot beams of pure energy hot enough to melt asteroid rock. They used it to destroy space stations and enemy ships. Against a single soft human body, it would be like using dynamite to kill a mouse. "Plasma cannon charged and ready. Commander, target the human's chest. I want him to suffer." On the screen, Jae-sung seemed to notice the energy building up around their ship. The space around the Krillian vessel began to glow with deadly blue light. "Oh, dear," he said mildly. "That looks quite dangerous. Are you sure you would not prefer to talk about this? I make very good cookies, too." Vextal smiled, showing rows of sharp metal teeth. Fire. The plasma beam erupted from the warship like a blue lightning bolt. It struck the human ship and passed through its weak shields as if they were made of paper. The beam hit Ambassador Jae-sung directly in the chest with enough force to vaporize a building. Smoke and fire filled the human's bridge. Warning alarms screamed. Sparks flew from broken equipment. Vextal leaned forward, eager to see the burned remains of the annoying diplomat. The smoke began to clear, and then Vextal saw something that made his blood freeze in his veins. Ambassador Jae-sung was still there. He was sitting on the floor of his damaged bridge, patting out small flames on his jacket sleeve. His shirt had a perfectly round burn hole in it, but the man himself looked completely unharmed. The human looked up at the camera and smiled that same kind, grandfatherly smile. "Well," he said calmly, "I suppose that is one way to say no to tea." The airlock doors of the human ship burst open with a loud bang. 6 Krillian soldiers poured inside like metal monsters from a nightmare. Their heavy boots made the small ship shake with each step. Behind them came Commander Vextal, his red eyes burning with confusion and anger. "Find the human," he shouted. "I want to see his body with my own eyes." The soldiers spread out through the tiny ship, their plasma rifles ready to fire. The ship was much smaller inside than it looked. There were only a few rooms, a cockpit, a bedroom, and a small kitchen area. Lieutenant Kryven pointed his weapon down a narrow hallway. "Commander!" "I hear something from the back room. Sounds like humming." They moved carefully toward the sound. The air still smelled like burned metal and smoke from the plasma blast. Pieces of broken equipment lay scattered on the floor. But somehow, someone was humming a cheerful tune. Vextal kicked open the door to the bedroom. Inside, they found something that made no sense at all. Ambassador Jae-sung was sitting at a small table, calmly making tea. A kettle sat on a tiny heating element, steam rising from its spout. The human had changed his burned shirt and now wore a clean white one. He looked up as they entered and smiled brightly. "Oh, hello again," he said happily. "Perfect timing. I was just brewing some jasmine tea. Would you like some? I have enough cups for everyone." The soldier stared in shock. Lieutenant Kryven's weapon trembled in his claws. "Commander!" "This is not possible. Our sensors recorded a direct hit. The plasma beam went right through his chest." Jae-sung looked down at his discarded shirt, which had a hole burned completely through it. "Yes, that was quite surprising. I do hope the diplomatic corps can pay for a new shirt. This was my favorite one." He poured hot water into a small teapot and stirred it gently. "Now then, shall we discuss those mining rights? I really think we can work something out that benefits everyone." Vextal stepped closer, his metal claws scraping against the floor. "Human, you should be dead. You should be nothing but ash and smoke." "Oh, that—" Jae-sung waved his hand as if it was nothing important. "I have always been a bit tough. My mother used to say I was built like a brick house." He chuckled softly, though I must admit that was the strongest greeting I have ever received. The commander's rage boiled over. "Seize him. Bring him to our ship. I want to know how he survived." The soldiers moved forward, but something strange happened. As the first Krillian reached for the human, Jae-sung simply stood up and patted the soldier's armored shoulder in a friendly way. The touch looked gentle, like a grandfather patting a child. But the huge warrior stumbled backward and crashed into the wall. His armor made a loud clang as he hit the metal. "Careful there," Jae-sung said kindly. "These ships can be quite cramped, easy to bump into things." The second soldier tried to grab the human's arm. Jae-sung politely took the soldier's plasma rifle and handed it back to him with a smile. "Thank you, but let us keep these pointed away from people, shall we?" he said. "Someone might get hurt." The soldier stared at his weapon in confusion. He had not given it to the human. Somehow, it had just appeared in the man's hands and then been given back. One by one, the other soldiers tried to capture the diplomat. Each time, something went wrong. They would slip or trip or find themselves sitting on the floor, looking dizzy. Jae-sung never seemed to do anything violent. He just moved like he was dancing, always in the right place at the right time. Within minutes, all 6 of the Empire's finest warriors were sitting cross-legged on the floor of the small room. They looked confused and slightly embarrassed. Jae-sung poured tea into several cups and offered them around. "Sugar?" I have some nice honey, if you prefer. It comes from Earth bees. Very sweet. Lieutenant Kryven accepted a cup with shaking claws. Commander, I do not understand what happened. He moved so fast, but also so slow. It was like trying to catch smoke. Vextal backed toward the door, his confidence cracking like ice. What are you? Jae Sung looked genuinely puzzled by the question. I am just a diplomat, Commander. I work for the Earth government. My job is to solve problems and make friends. He sipped his tea and made a satisfied sound. This really is excellent jasmine. My wife picked it out for me before I left home. She has very good taste. The human looked around at the armed soldiers sitting peacefully on his floor, drinking tea and looking confused. Now, about those mining rights. I have brought some documents that I think will address all your concerns. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a data pad. Somehow, it had survived the plasma blast without a scratch. I propose a joint mining operation. Earth provides the workers and equipment. Your empire gets 60% of the profits. We also throw in medical technology that might interest you. Vextal stared at this impossible creature who had survived a weapon that could destroy buildings, then served tea to his attackers, and was now conducting business as if nothing unusual had happened. Take him to the ship, he said quietly. I want to run some tests. The detention cell on the Krillian warship was designed to break the strongest prisoners in the galaxy. Metal walls thick as a man's body surrounded a space barely large enough for one person. The air tasted bitter with chemicals that could poison most life forms. Gravity pressed down with crushing force that would snap bones like twigs. Ambassador Jae Sung sat cross-legged on the hard metal bench, speaking calmly into a small recording device. Personal log, day 3 of my diplomatic mission, he said in a cheerful voice. The Krillians have provided me with unique accommodations. The room is quite cozy, though a bit heavy on the industrial design. High above in the observation deck, Commander Vextal watched through thick glass windows. Next to him stood Dr. Velchris, the ship's chief scientist. The doctor's insect-like hands moved quickly over control panels, adjusting settings that should have killed any normal creature hours ago. Increase gravity to 10 times normal, Velchris ordered his assistants. The machine hummed louder. Down in the cell, invisible force pressed down like a giant hand trying to crush everything flat. Any Krillian would have been smashed into paste instantly. Jae Sung paused in his recording, stretched his back with a small grunt, and continued speaking. The gravity here seems quite strong, he noted. Rather like wearing a heavy backpack during a mountain hike. Good for building muscle strength, I suppose. Velchris checked his readings 3 times. The numbers could not be right. Commander, the gravitational force in that chamber would flatten our strongest warriors. He acts like he is doing morning exercises. Try the atmospheric controls, Vextal growled. Fill the chamber with Rigelian death gas. Green vapor began seeping through the air vents. The toxic gas was so deadly that one breath could kill a full-grown battle beast. The cell filled with a sickly green cloud that hid the human from view. For a moment, there was silence. Then they heard coughing from inside the chamber. Excuse me, Jae Sung's voice came through the speakers. I wonder if someone could adjust the air freshener in here. It has quite a strong chemical smell. Perhaps something floral next time? Lavender is always nice. The green gas began to clear through the thinning vapor. They could see the human waving his hand in front of his face like someone trying to clear cigarette smoke from a room. Also, he added helpfully, you might want to check your ventilation system. This much chemical scent could be harmful to people with allergies. Dr. Velchris stared at his control panel in shock. Commander, that gas is not air freshener. It is pure poison. We use it to execute prisoners. I can see that, Vextal said quietly. His voice was beginning to sound scared. Try the neural disruptor, he ordered. Full power. Energy fields designed to scramble brain signals flooded the detention cell. Blue lightning danced across the walls. The weapon was meant to cause terrible pain and drive enemies insane with agony. Down in the chamber, Jae Sung rubbed his temples and reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small white bottle and shook 2 pills into his palm. "Ah, there we go," he said, swallowing the medicine dry. "Long space flights always give me tension headaches. These usually help within 20 minutes. He looked directly up at the observation window, as if he could see through the one-way glass. "Now, then," he said with that same kind smile, "shall we discuss those mining rights? I really do have other appointments this week. The Centauri delegation is expecting me on Thursday." Velcris turned to the commander with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, we have subjected him to forces that would destroy our strongest battle machines. He thinks we are giving him a massage and treating his headache. What about temperature?" Vextal asked desperately. "Freeze him." The temperature in the cell dropped rapidly. Frost began forming on the metal walls. The air became so cold that it would freeze Krillian blood solid in their veins. Jae-sung stood up and began doing jumping jacks. "Bit chilly in here," he said between breaths. "Good thing I brought my jacket. Though I must say, your climate control system is quite impressive. Very precise adjustments." He finished his exercises and sat back down, barely breathing hard. He continued, "If we are going to keep talking through this speaker system, perhaps I could come up to your bridge? It would be more comfortable for everyone. I could bring my tea set." Velcris was now shaking so hard his armor rattled. "Commander, our database says humans come from a Class M planet. Standard atmosphere, normal gravity, moderate climate. How is this possible? Run a full scan of their home world." Vextal ordered. "Find out everything about these humans." As the computer systems worked to gather information, they watched their impossible prisoner pull out a small notebook and begin writing. He looked as calm and comfortable as someone sitting in a peaceful library. "I really should write my wife," they heard him say. "She worries when I am away on long trips. I will tell her about the fascinating new friends I have met." He looked up at the observation window again and waved cheerfully. "Take your time with those scans, gentlemen. I have plenty to keep me busy down here. Though if you have any books, I would love something to read. Do you have anything by Charles Dickens?" Dr. Velcris had been awake for 8 hours straight, digging through every piece of data the Krillian Empire had collected about humans. What he found in the computer files made his hands shake so badly he could barely type. "Commander Vextal," he called across the laboratory. "You need to see this immediately." Vextal walked over, his metal feet clanking on the floor. "What did you find, Doctor?" "Look at this." Velcris pointed to the big screen on the wall. A blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly in space. It looked peaceful and pretty, like a jewel floating in the darkness. "This is Earth," the doctor said, "the human home world." "It looks harmless enough," Vextal replied. "What is the problem?" Velcris pressed a button, and numbers appeared next to the planet image. His voice cracked as he read them out loud. "Gravity, 1.3 times what we consider the safe maximum for most species. Oxygen levels, toxic to 80% of known life forms. Atmospheric pressure, dangerously high. Weather systems that produce winds strong enough to destroy cities." Vextal leaned closer to the screen. "Are you saying their planet is trying to kill them?" "Every single day," Velcris whispered. "But that is just the beginning." The screen changed to show Earth's animals. Vextal watched in growing horror as creatures appeared that made his worst nightmares seem friendly. "These are called sharks," Velcris explained, showing massive fish with rows of razor teeth. They can bite through metal, and the humans swim with them for fun. "For fun," Vextal repeated. "This is a grizzly bear," the doctor continued. The screen showed a huge furry beast with claws like knives. "It weighs as much as a small vehicle and can run faster than our military bikes. Humans go camping in areas where these creatures live. They camp near those monsters on purpose. They call it recreation." The pictures kept coming. Poisonous snakes that could kill with one bite. Spiders the size of dinner plates. Crocodiles that could snap a person in half. And somehow, humans lived on the same planet with all of them. "But surely they stay in safe cities," Vextal said hopefully. Velcris pulled up more files. "Actually, they seek out danger. Look at these activities they do for entertainment." Video files began playing. Humans jumping out of aircraft with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Humans climbing straight up the sides of mountains using only their hands. Humans throwing themselves off bridges while attached to elastic ropes. They jump off bridges? Vextal asked in shock. The higher, the better. They also surf on waves that could crush buildings, dive to the bottom of deep oceans, and something called volcano boarding, where they slide down active volcanic mountains. Vextal sat down heavily in a chair. What kind of species considers certain death to be entertainment? The kind that evolved on a planet where everything is constantly trying to kill them. Velcris said quietly, "Look at their body structure." A human skeleton appeared on the screen next to a Krillian one for comparison. Their bones are denser than our armor plating. Their muscles are designed for endurance rather than speed. They can run for hours without stopping. They have backup organs for most vital functions. If one kidney fails, they keep working with the other one. Backup organs? 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, and a healing system that can regrow damaged tissue. Commander, they are built like living tanks that repair themselves. Velcris pulled up the final piece of information, and this explains why our weapons did not work. The screen showed temperature and pressure readings from various parts of Earth. They live in places where the ground temperature can melt lead, other places where the air is so cold it would freeze our blood instantly. Some humans live on mountains where there is barely enough air to breathe. Vextal stared at the data in growing fear. You are telling me that what we consider deadly weapons they experience as mild weather? Exactly. Our plasma cannon? To them, it probably felt like standing too close to a campfire. Our poison gas? Like breathing air freshener with a strong chemical smell. A soft beeping sound interrupted them. On the communication screen, Ambassador Jae-sung appeared. He was still in his attention cell, looking perfectly comfortable despite the crushing gravity and toxic atmosphere. "Hello there," the human said with his usual friendly smile. "I do not mean to interrupt, but I was wondering if we could move our negotiations along. I have a meeting with the Centauri delegation tomorrow, and I would hate to be late." He held up a small calendar book. "Also, I promised my wife I would call home tonight. She likes to hear about my travels." Velcris checked the readings from the detention cell. Everything was still set to maximum deadly levels. "Oh, and one more thing," Jae-sung added casually. "Could someone turn up the heat a little? It is getting quite cold down here. Nothing serious, just enough to be comfortable." The doctor looked at his instruments. The cell temperature was currently cold enough to freeze solid metal. Vextal stared at the human's grandfatherly smile and felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with temperature. "Doctor," he said slowly, "I think we may have made a terrible mistake." The conference room on the Krillian warship had been quickly changed to look more friendly for their important guest. Soft lights replaced the harsh red battle lighting. Someone had even found a table and chairs that looked less like torture devices. Commander Vextal sat across from Ambassador Jae-sung, trying not to let his hand shake as he watched the human pour coffee from a silver container. The smell was pleasant, like roasted nuts and flowers mixed together. "I hope you do not mind I brought my own," Jae-sung said with his usual warm smile. "Ship coffee is never quite as good as the homemade kind." He offered a cup to Vextal, who took it carefully with his metal claws. When his suit's sensors analyzed what was inside, he nearly dropped the cup in shock. The liquid contained enough natural stimulants to power a small spacecraft for a week. Jae-sung sipped his coffee like it was harmless water and opened his data pad. "Now then, about the Kepler 442 system mining situation. I understand your concerns about territory rights." What happened next was the most one-sided business meeting in Krillian history. Every suggestion the human made sounded reasonable and fair. Every contract he offered seemed to benefit both sides equally. But somehow, by the end of 2 hours, the Krillian Empire had agreed to give humans almost everything they wanted. "So we mine 60% of the asteroid belt," Jae-sung said, making notes on his pad. "Your people get 40% plus full access to our medical technology. That includes healing machines that can fix broken bones in minutes." Vextal nodded quickly. After seeing what human weapons could not do to this man, He very much wanted human healing technology. The trade routes will follow the paths marked in blue on this star chart. The diplomat continued. This gives human ships the faster routes, but your military vessels get priority at all fuel stations. Yes, that sounds fair. Vextal agreed, though he was not sure why. And of course, there is the mutual defense agreement. Jisung said casually, if anyone attacks Krillian space, Earth ships will come to help. In return, your empire will provide the same protection for human colonies. Vextal signed the papers without reading them carefully. The idea of having these impossible humans as allies instead of enemies made him feel much safer. Oh, one more small thing, Jae-sung added, pulling out another document. Some of our people would love to visit your worlds for cultural exchange. We have some activities that your warriors might enjoy. What kind of activities? Vextal asked nervously. Mountain climbing, deep-sea diving, volcano surfing, extreme weather camping. You know, the usual recreational sports. The commander thought about his soldiers, bred for war and trained to fear nothing. Try and keep up with humans who jumped off cliff for fun. He signed that paper, too. Wonderful. Jae-sung stood up and shook Vextal's claw with his soft human hand. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship between our peoples. As the human packed up his things, Vextal found the courage to ask a question that had been bothering him for days. Ambassador, may I ask you something personal? Of course, Jae-sung replied kindly. When we fired our plasma cannon at you, and when we put you in our detention cell with all those terrible conditions, did you know we were trying to kill you? Jae-sung paused in his packing and looked genuinely surprised. Kill me? Oh my goodness, no. I thought you were just showing off your technology. Very impressive equipment. By the way, that gravity machine would make excellent exercise equipment back on Earth. You thought we were showing off? Well, yes. I assumed it was some kind of warrior greeting custom, like a firm handshake, but with energy weapons. He chuckled softly. I must admit, it was the most energetic first contact I have ever experienced. Vextal stared at him in amazement. This human had survived their most deadly weapons and thought they were being polite. 2 hours later, Jae-sung's small diplomatic ship flew away toward his next appointment. Vextal stood on the bridge, watching it disappear into hyperspace. His communication officer approached carefully. Commander, should we tell the other fleets about the humans? Vextal thought about what he had learned. A species that treated military weapons like mild weather. People who considered mortal danger to be weekend entertainment. Diplomats who could break out of any prison but chose to stay and negotiate politely instead. Send a priority message to all Krillian commanders, he ordered. Humans are now designated as most favored species. Any ship that fires on a human vessel will answer to me personally. He paused, then added, also send a note that human diplomats should be treated with extreme courtesy at all times. Offer them tea immediately. Good tea. Meanwhile, in his small ship, Ambassador Jae-sung hummed happily as he reviewed his mission reports. The Krillians had been surprisingly cooperative once they got past their initial shyness. He made a note to recommend them for future diplomatic contact. He pulled up his next assignment, a trade dispute with something called the Vegan Empire. He smiled and began preparing his tea set. Perhaps they would appreciate his special jasmine blend. Across the galaxy, warning messages spread through military networks. Humans appear peaceful but indestructible. Do not attempt standard intimidation. Repeat, do not attempt standard intimidation. Offer tea instead. But Jae-sung never learned that his polite persistence had made humanity the most respected diplomatic force in known space.